Hello, welcome back. This is Jeff Byers, and this is Danny150. Hope you guys are having a great day and a good start to your week. This is Module 6. We just finished Module 5, your high poly modeling. So if you got those edge loops and you got those smooth, just double checking to make sure in Module 5 that you duplicated your low poly, then you added your edge loops, and then you smoothed them. So we're at the point now. For Module 6, we're going to take the low poly, not the high poly, the low poly, and we're going to UV map those using UDIM tiles, okay? And then we're going to be texturing, so UV mapping, UDIM tiles, and then texturing. We're going to be baking those maps in Substance Painter. That's kind of what we're going to be doing with Module 6, okay? You guys know all this preliminary stuff. You know how to contact me if you need to. jbyers3@jcc.edu. You can use Canvas as well. I see that daily. In Module 6, I'm going to be replacing this, so you'll be watching the new one, which you're watching right now. The schedule, you guys know the schedule by now. It hasn't changed. And overview, this is Module 6. Part 3. In this module, you're going to continue working with Module 5, Part 2, which we did last time, but you're going to be using the low poly. So now that's why I had you duplicate them. So you have the low poly, and we're going to go ahead and UV map the low poly using UDIM tiles. Okay? Alright, so then you're going to take those UDIM tiles. Now you still have time to go in there and detail them. Let's say you didn't have time to detail them in Module 5. I would go back and add some details like rivets, small vents, some added detail to make them yours, okay, to make them more original to you. So that's what I would suggest, okay? So do that before you start doing this. So if you start early on Monday, you should have no problem. Spend Monday adding detail to the high poly, and then you can bring them into Substance Painter. Now, you can also add detail in Substance Painter. It's fairly easy. Again, you can look at the videos I had for that on the Sci-Fi Crate. So feel free to go back and look at those. All the modules are always open. I don't close those modules, so you can open them anytime and go back and look at some of the videos if you've forgotten stuff. Okay. Alright, so that's the idea for Module 6. Pretty simple, straightforward. And we know all this other stuff here. Lesson content, there's really not anything extra unless I find something that I need you guys to know. But the lesson content will go right to the course assignment. And you're going to be able to go through that. You guys will UV map using UDIM tiles and turn in 17 sci-fi module hallway assets as an MB file, OBJ, and FBX file format. The student will lay out the UDIM tiles for the low poly. I'll keep stressing this. The low poly, you're going to UDIM tile the low poly. Do not UDIM tile the high poly. You don't need to do that. So only UV map the low poly. Okay, so make sure you do it in an efficient manner. Okay, laying out UVs. Again, remember when you're UDIM mapping, think of materials. What type of material? Let's say, let's go to a picture here. So let's say this material here has a different material than this. This could be softer. It could be a different type of material. It could be rubber. That's up to you. But whatever you end up making that material, okay, you can lay that on its own UV map. Okay. So that's what UDIM tile is great for. You can separate the materials that way, and I like to separate my UV materials that way. That way, I can go into Substance Painter and just drag and drop the material right on there, and it'll give me all the materials that I need for that particular material. You notice that I use the same material in the hallway in different areas, okay, to make it look interesting. Okay. So those are things you can do. Of course, I want you to texture this the way you want it to look. Okay, you don't have to follow what I'm doing here as far as colors go. If you want to, great. If you don't, you want to do your own thing, your own colors, fantastic. In fact, I encourage it. So just make sure that when you do Unum tiles, think about what your material choices, where your materials are going to be. If you're not sure where they're going to be and you're still experimenting, then I would probably separate the materials out and just kind of have, I would say, kind of an ID map. I would go in there and just kind of map out on a piece of paper. This will be rubber, okay? This UV map is going to be steel. This one's going to be chrome. This one's going to be, and so on and so forth. So we have those laid out, and then when you're actually laying things out, you go, oh yeah, I want to try to see if I can make that chrome. Let me experiment with this one to see if that would, that rusty metal would look good here at the bottom, because humidity and rust usually collect at the edges of things. I know this is inside. Usually when you're outside, you'll see water collect at the bottom and then kind of move up the metal and rust that way. Now, usually humidity causes a lot of problems for interior pieces. Okay, so just keep that in mind. You don't need a lot of rust on this. In fact, I'd rather not see a whole lot of rust on the interior. Okay, just because it's a sci-fi hallway, and usually those are pretty clean, except for scuffs and scratches and stuff like that you're going to add. Okay, and usually scuffs and scratches, you got to think about how it's used, the kind of use, the history. When it comes to texturing, it's all about history and how to add that history. How did somebody touch this? Did they rub against it? How did it wear? Why do I have wear and tear right there? Why do I have more wear and tear here than I would up higher? Normally, wear and tear is where people are handling and touching and moving and scraping, and up here you won't have as much wear and tear as you do down here. Okay, so you got to think about those things. Okay, when you're texturing. Okay, so lay out those Unum tiles as efficient as you can. Don't waste space. Okay, all right. So efficient manner. You're going to bake the necessary maps. So again, those maps that we baked for the sci-fi crate will work for the sci-fi modular hallway. Okay, now I will say that those of you that are using Photoshop, and I haven't talked about this yet, you can add the ambient occlusion. So when you bake an ambient occlusion map, a lot of that information does not come over to Maya very well. So what I suggest that we do with the color map is you go ahead and multiply the ambient occlusion over top of the color map. Okay, so I'm going to have a video on that. So it's not necessarily going to be in Module 6. It's going to be in Module 7, where we put everything together. Where we add materials to, the Arnold materials to the modular assets, and then I can show you how to add the color map and the ambient occlusion map. So please bake the ambient occlusion map and make sure you have it. Okay. Alright, so, and then you're going to take 2 screenshots from Substance Painter. I just have one as a, kind of show you what this would be from the left side. This is the left side perspective, and then you have the right side perspective where the camera will be over here somewhere, and you'll be able to see this side. Okay, I don't need any wireframes. This is all texturing. I've already got your wireframes and stuff. And I already have your high poly wireframes and everything, so we're good there. So now it's all about texturing. So all I need to see is 2 screenshots from Substance Painter, and make sure I can see everything. As you can see here, this is just a good example of the left hand side perspective, and then you would do one on the right hand side. Okay, just being clear on that. Okay, and of course, when you're UV mapping, take it slow, take it easy. Like I said, I plan it all out on a piece of paper first, like Unum tiles, how many Unum tiles I really want to have, where I want my materials to be. Even if I'm experimenting, if you're experimenting, you're not exactly sure what you're gonna do. Make sure you make more Udemy tiles so you can have more flexibility, and you don't have to go back to Maya and go back and UV map things again. So think about, and you can follow exactly what I'm doing. You can do the same exact colors that I'm doing and the same exact materials if you want to. That's up to you. I don't necessarily want you to do that, but if you do, I'm not going to take points off, but if it's easier for you to just follow exactly. But I would recommend that you experiment and have fun and enjoy and make these yours. I mean, we're at a point now that I want you to make these yours. I want you to add more detail. I want you to go in there and bake more detail into those. Because I kind of left a blank slate, and that's kind of these are kind of boring looking, but I really would like to see you guys add more detail. Maybe venting down at the bottom. You have venting there. Maybe some venting up here. Maybe some rivets on the side holding the panels up. I mean, you can do anything, a number of stuff. Okay, but right now, but you have to do that before you UV map stuff. Okay, or I should say before you bake stuff. Okay. Because you can UV map your low poly right away, and if you have time, you can go back and with the high poly go into Mudbox or Substance Painter and add those details there, and then you can texture. Okay, but once you texture, it's hard to add those details, so you have to bake those normal maps again. So just keep that in mind. Right. So be patient. Okay, I may not have this one in there, but I like to kind of break things up a little bit. But be patient when you're UV mapping. Okay, it's a tedious process. I don't think it's hard. And some students have told me that it's therapeutic to lay out UVs. I'm like thinking, wow. Then I need to send my UVs to you guys to do them for me because I can't stand UV mapping. It's a necessity as a modeler to be good at UV mapping, so you can UV map your own stuff. But it's a tedious process, no matter how you look at it. When you get really, really good, it's not such a bad process, but it's still something I don't really enjoy doing. My favorite thing is texturing. Once you get into texturing, that's where the magic happens. That's how you bring your model to life. So that's where it's at, as far as I'm concerned. I love modeling, but to see your textures come to life in Substance Painter is amazing, and then bringing them into either Maya or Unreal to finish things up and show and present your work. We're going to present in Maya using Arnold, and we can get some really nice lighting going on there, and that's in Module 7. That's when it all comes together. But I find texturing to be the most fun. So just keep thinking of that when you're UV mapping and you're pulling your hair out, right? So okay, so notes: do not stack UVs on top of each other that are not the same shape, size, and rotated the same way. Okay, I would highly recommend when you're using Udemy tiles, do not stack things, because you're going to have normal map issues like crazy if you try to stack things. Even if you see me stacking things, I would highly recommend that you don't. We've had some students that have really run into problems. I know what I'm doing, but the problem is that some students don't realize they're just stacking stuff on top of each other. They have to be exactly the same shape, the same size, and they have to be rotated the same way. So basically, if you're doing a tire is a great example on a game object that you can use the same exact texture map. Okay, so you can, as long as they're the same shape, which is round, same size, and they're rotated the same way, you're good to go. Okay? Alright. So just keep that in mind. So another thing to think about, you should know what your system can handle, what it can't. You should know how many textures you can use and you can't, what you can and can't, and that's something that we did, that you learned in baking maps and using Mudbox and all that stuff, what your system can handle, what it can't. So Udemy tiles are no different. It takes a lot of system RAM and video RAM, so GPU speed and all that stuff. Udemy tiles really, the problem with Udemy tiles is that they use a lot of resource. Okay, and so, but they're more efficient. They're a lot more fun to use, and you can spread things out, and you don't have to worry about how many maps you have, except for that it does take up hard drive space. So you're going to have maps. They're efficient in the game engine. They're efficient in Maya, but they become inefficient by themselves, meaning that it takes a lot of storage space. So if you're looking at 4096 by 4096, each map, and we have what, four maps or 5 maps, each map is about 24 megabytes a piece. They're about 24 megabytes. So now when you look at all 4 of those, the color maps, right? So if you have 5 UDIMs, you're talking about well over 100 megabytes, okay, per UDIM tile. So now if you have 9 UDIM tiles, now you're almost at a gig of hard drive space. Okay, so I just wanted to explain that. So that's kind of how it equates, especially at this size. Okay. Now, if you start running into issues and problems, I always start at 4096 by 4096 and just use fewer UDIM tiles. Okay. If you know exactly how you want a texture, you can do that. If you're not sure, you're going to probably use more UDIM tiles, but you're going to need more hard drive space and more resources for that. So just keep that in mind as you're thinking about your textures and how you want to apply your textures and all that stuff. So we need to think ahead. So then we just take you through everything you need to know, getting started with Substance Painter. Make sure you save your work all the time, especially when you're texture mapping stuff. So we're not necessarily going back into Maya, okay, and adding textures, alright? But make sure that you don't forget to take a screenshot before you close Painter. Now all I'm asking is that you have screenshots completed in Substance Painter. You do not have to go back into Maya. You do not have to give me renders there. I just need screenshots from the right perspective and left perspective of the viewport of Substance Painter. Okay? And then I congratulate you with your hard work, and this is an example, my example without any detail on there. You can see that it's just clear, it's a clean slate, okay? So please feel free to add detail. I really want you guys to. Not necessarily on the top or the bottom, but just think about adding more detail on these pieces here, okay? So with that said, you know, that's it. So I got the additional help if these are helpful for you, or you can go back and watch those modules again and kind of pick the ones you want. Otherwise, you can just disregard these if you feel comfortable with how you do things in Substance Painter and all that stuff. So, right, just wanted to let you know. And then the grading rubric, that's really important too. So what am I grading you on? You're going to turn in 17 sci-fi modular hallway assets UV mapped using UDIM tiles as an MB, OBJ, and FBX format. You will also turn in all textures created in Substance Painter for the sci-fi module hallway assets as a PNG or JPEG. Now, PNG is an uncompressed, as we all know, and that's something you guys can keep. But if you find your scenes getting too large, just remember that things will not upload if you have problems uploading your files. You're going to have to go into Photoshop and change those to JPEGs. So let's say if you have a gig of textures that may not upload properly, because I think they have either a gig or 2 gigs. I think it's a gig that you can upload. Okay, so I'm sorry for that. That's something that's been set in Canvas. So if you do have issues with uploading, that's probably what it is. Alright, so keep that in mind. And you can easily change those with Photoshop, bring it in, and then export it out as a JPEG, and you can hand those in if you want to. Okay? You're going to need to turn in 2 perspective screenshots, left and right, in Substance Painter of the low poly modular assets with all the textures on. Okay? UV packing, how am I going to grade you on that? Well, you need to basically UV map and UDIM tiling, efficiently packed, and do not exceed the UV 0 to 1 threshold. Basically, do not go outside of the box. They need to be realistically textured and reflects real-life materials like metal, plastics, glass, rubber, etc. I don't want you guys using crazy, weird textures on your sci-fi modular assets. I want you to look at other people's work that you see on the internet I want you to look at games that you've seen. Don't do any crazy, unrealistic things in texturing, because that just doesn't go over very well. So just keep remembering that. Try to keep as realistic as you can. Make sure there are no visible seams. They're free of errors like stretching and compression. So I'm going to be looking at that. And all PBR texture maps are included. Okay, which we talked about. All right, that's worth 10 points. The points here are 40. Turn instructions. Again, you can look at the deliverables. You're going to be turning in the 17 MB, OBJ, and FBX. You can be turning in all the textures as a PNG or JPEG. And you will turn in 2 perspective screenshots left and right on the low poly. Okay, and then you'll create all these folders for me, subfolders. Okay, so you're going to do source images, you're going to do screenshots, and you're going to place them in and upload them into the folder after you zip them. Okay, everything's set up here. If you have questions or concerns, email me, contact me, and let me know, and I'm happy to help. So please have a great week and enjoy this. Texturing is always a great time. It's always fun. And please experiment, have fun, and start early, because that will give you a lot more time to experiment and have fun with this, and go back and make adjustments if you need to. Have a great week, and I'll see you guys in Module 7. We're almost there. Have a good week.